the Voice of Vietnam, broadcasting from Hanoi, capital of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam.
Welcome to The Voice of Vietnam. I'm Nhật Quỳnh. In today's program, after the news, current affairs comments on relations between Vietnam and Malaysia as Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad pays his first official visit to Vietnam. Our society segment introduces stand-up paddle boarding, a new sports trend on Hanoi's West Lake. And Business in Focus looks at Australia's new import requirements for fresh longans from Vietnam. But first, here comes the news.
In the news headlines, Vietnam and Malaysia aim to bring two-way trade to $20 billion in the near future. The world community continues to oppose activities that raise tensions in the EC, and U.S. President Donald Trump continues to be tough on trade with China. And for the news in detail, Vietnam and Malaysia have agreed to increase two-way trade to $20 billion in the near future, according to a press conference between Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc and his Malaysian counterpart Mahathir Mohamad in Hanoi on Tuesday. Prime Minister Phúc said the two sides will boost cooperation across the board together with interpersonal exchanges and establish a Vietnam-Malaysia parliamentarians group.
Chúng tôi vui mừng về những cái tiến triển tốt đẹp về thương mại và đầu tư.
We're trying to raise bilateral trade from the present $15 billion to $20 billion in the future. Malaysia is Vietnam's eighth largest trade partner. We encourage investment in infrastructure, energy, tourism, high-tech agriculture, transport, seafood processing, and logistics.
The two sides said they will cooperate closely in responding to global developments and the promotion of free trade and international integration. The Prime Ministers agreed to 45 Malaysia's oil and gas company, Petronas and Petro-Vietnam, to expand cooperation in oil and gas exploration and services. Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad said,
I'm looking forward to implementing the agreements and the understanding that we have achieved during the course of our discussion, both restricted meeting as well as delegation meeting.
Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc said both sides will cooperate with ASEAN in ensuring peace, stability, security, and the freedom of navigation and flight over the EC, and settling disputes by peaceful means with respect for international law, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and diplomatic and legal processes. They agreed on the principles of not using force or threatening to use force, non-militarization, and full implementation on the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the EC toward a legally binding code of conduct in the EC. Vietnam always attaches great importance to the reinforcement and development of its strategic partnership with Thailand. Chairwoman of the National Assembly, Nguyễn Thị Kim Ngân, said during talks with Speaker of the Thai House of Representatives, Chuan Lee Pai, in Bangkok on Tuesday. At the talks, the two top legislators exchanged ideas on cooperation between the two countries in economy, trade, and investment. Chairwoman Nguyen suggested Thailand facilitate the trade of Vietnamese goods and services by striving to reach the bilateral trade mark of $20 billion by 2020. Chuan Lee Pai proposed the two countries soon review the bilateral labor cooperation agreement signed in 2015. The two top legislators agreed to boost cooperation in culture, sports, tourism, and interpersonal exchanges in consideration of geographical proximity and cultural similarities. Chairwoman Nguyen described defense and security as twin pillars cooperation for Vietnam and Thailand. She urged the two sides to soon sign agreements on extradition and mutual legal assistance regarding criminal, civil, and trade matters. Moreover, she called for better coordination to address issues related to fishermen, fishing vessels, and violations at sea in accordance with the global standard and the bilateral strategic partnership. The National Assembly leader called on the two countries to increase cooperation in the Greater Mekong sub-region in line with the common interest of Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam, and to coordinate to promote peace, security, stability, safety and freedom of navigation and aviation in the EC, as well as implement fully and effectively the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the EC, and soon adopt the Code of Conduct in the EC. Chuan Lik Pai said that close coordination between Vietnamese and Thai legislative bodies will contribute to fueling economic development along with the executive sector. The same day, Ms. Tan met with the Speaker of the Thai Upper House, Pompek Wichichochai. She urged their respective legislators to strengthen cooperation in accordance with the bilateral strategic partnership. She said she hopes the two countries will strengthen cooperation and mutual trust to speak with one voice on regional issues. She asks the Thai Parliament and the ASEAN Interparliamentary Assembly members to support Vietnam's stance in settling EC issues in line with international law and through peaceful means. Speaker Wichichochai said Thailand is ready to support Vietnam in the fulfillment of its role. He said Thailand always supports Vietnam in issues of mutual concern, including the maritime issue and others. Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono on Tuesday stated that Japan opposes any action that intensifies tensions in the EC. The minister made a statement in response to a request by the correspondents of the Vietnam News Agency for comments on escalating tensions in the EC due to a series of unilateral activities by China that seriously violate international law, sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction, as well as hinder the long-standing oil and gas activities conducted in the exclusive economic zone of Vietnam and other littoral countries. He said that the EC is an important sea line for Japan and many other countries. It is directly related to the stability and peace of the region, adding that the international community, including Japan, is paying serious attention to the developing situation in the sea. The minister further said that after the recent East Asia Summit Foreign Ministers meeting in Bangkok, he has raised his concerns about the serious situation in the EC and held that the international community should oppose any unilateral attempt to change the status quo and all coercive actions taken by any country. The top Japanese diplomat asked all parties concerned to demilitarize facilities or features in the sea, stressing that any dispute must be solved according to international law, most notably the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. The countries should continue in emphasizing the need to uphold the rule of law in the EC, he stated. China's activities in the EC are dangerous and may create a new normal, harming countries that have claimed sovereignty in the EC, according to Tang Siu-moon, head of the ASEAN Studies Center at Singapore's ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute. In an interview with VOV, Mr. Tang said that recent developments in the EC involved not only Vietnam and China, but also other countries like Japan, the US, the EU, Australia, and New Zealand. Beijing is ignoring the reaction of the international community in doubling down on its position in the EC, he said.
This seems to be a sensible course of action because if this continues, the situation will escalate. So a cooling off period where all the parties were to perhaps scale back their actions and go back to the status quo as in June to allow cooler heads to prevail and for diplomacy to take place, that might be the best course of action. China would continue this course of action whereby it would do whatever it sees fit to protect its national interests. Yeah. So the danger of this is that if this continues to perpetuate, then it would create a new normal, a new status quo, which would jeopardize the positions of the claimant states.
Dr. Tang said the global community should come together and raise one voice, demanding China stop its illegal activities in the sea. China has sent a survey vessel and armed escorts to Vietnamese waters, violating Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf.
You're listening to The Voice of Vietnam, and now some world news. U.S. President Donald Trump says China has no choice but to make a trade deal. President Trump has predicted a trade deal with China after positive gestures by Beijing, calming global markets that have been roiled by new tariffs from the world's two largest economies. Mr. Trump said after a G7 summit of world leaders in France that he believed China was sincere about wanting to reach a deal. Chinese Vice Premier Liu He, who has been leading the talks in Washington, said on Monday that China was willing to resolve the trade dispute through calm negotiations and oppose an increase in trade tensions. Japan will go through its plans to revoke South Korea's status as a trusted trade partner. Japan's Trade Minister Hiroshige Seiko said on Tuesday that this is a domestic decision aimed at implementing appropriate export controls, adding it's not meant to impact relations between Japan and South Korea. Japan will remove South Korea from a wide list of 27 countries that enjoy minimum trade restrictions on sensitive goods, including electronic components. Brazil has rejected $20 million aid from G7 countries to fight wildfires in the Amazon. Onyx Lorenzoni, chief of staff to the Brazilian president, told the G1 News website that Brazil appreciates the offer but suggests those resources can be better used to reforest Europe.
And other main points once again. Vietnam and Malaysia aim to bring two-way trade to $20 billion in the near future. The world community continues to oppose activities that raise tensions in the EC, and U.S. President Donald Trump continues to be tough on trade with China. And that's the news from The Voice of Vietnam.
You're listening to VOV. Here comes the current affairs. Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad began an official visit to Vietnam on Tuesday. Leaders of the two countries will discuss measures to create a stable framework for stronger, friendlier Vietnam-Malaysia relations. This is Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad's first visit to Vietnam since he took office in May 2018. Malaysia has a population of 32 million people. Since Vietnam and Malaysia established diplomatic relations on March 30, 1973, the two countries have strengthened cooperation in all fields: politics, diplomacy, defense, security, economics, and culture. The two countries have regularly exchanged high-level delegations, and the two issued a joint statement on a strategic partnership during Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng official visit to Malaysia in 2015. In March 2017, they approved a plan of action to implement the strategic partnership. Last year, they co-organized activities to mark the 45th anniversary of their diplomatic ties. The two have collaborated effectively at regional and global forums, particularly ASEAN and the UN. Economic cooperation has progressed rapidly, with bilateral trade revenue reaching $11.5 billion last year. At a business conference in Kuala Lumpur last month, Vietnam and Malaysia agreed to raise bilateral trade to $25 billion by 2025. Malaysia is Vietnam's sixth largest trade partner and the eighth largest investor, with 600 projects totaling $13 billion. The Vietnamese government has offered favorable conditions and support for Malaysian businesses to invest in infrastructure, energy, technology, and smart city building. Vietnam currently has approximately 29,000 workers working in Malaysia, mainly in manufacturing, construction, agriculture, and fishery. More than 1,000 Vietnamese students are studying in Malaysia. Malaysia is now the seventh largest source of visitors to Vietnam. More than 540,000 Malaysians traveling to Vietnam last year, up 12.4% from 2017. Petro Vietnam and Petronas Malaysia have partnered since 1991 in oil and gas exploration, processing, and service. The two companies are currently involved in 10 joint projects. The two countries regularly coordinate and support each other at regional and global forums, and have worked closely to promote the ASEAN community. Vietnam-Malaysia relations have been nurtured by leaders of both countries to benefit their peoples and regional peace and stability.
The Malaysian Prime Minister's visit to Vietnam is an opportunity to review and discuss specific measures to realize agreements and deepen bilateral ties. Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad will hold talks with Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc and pay courtesy visits to other high-ranking leaders.
Up next is the society segment. Come to Westlake on a beautiful day and you will see people subboarding, stand-up paddle boarding. Subboarding originated in Hawaii and was imported into Vietnam a short time ago.
Subboarding is considered the father of modern surfing. A subboard is powered by a paddle approximately 2 meters long, using a technique similar to canoeing or kayaking. Chen Chung Kian of the You Move Sub Club, the first subboarding club in Hanoi, says Hanoians are getting interested in subboarding.
Bộ môn này được biết đến với cái câu slogan rất là phổ biến, đó là
The slogan of our sport is freedom on the water's surface. Standing in the middle of a big lake is a great feeling and makes SUP stand out.
A subboard, about 3.5 to 4 meters in length, is made of plastic, wood, rubber, or polyurethane. The most popular board in Vietnam is an inflatable board, which is light and can be folded into a backpack. A paddle sized to suit the user's height and a life jacket complete the necessary equipment. A subboarder can stand, sit, or lie down, and it's easy to jump off and get back on the board. It only takes about 15 minutes to learn how to control and steer the board. Hoàng Thị Bích Hà of Ho Chi Minh City said.
Nữ giới và nam giới cũng giống như nhau thôi. Với môn này, với tất cả các
Both men and women can subboard. The most important thing is to have fun. If you enjoy it, you can easily master it. All you need is patience and a little practice.
Kian says that while the technique of controlling the board is simple, you should always exercise caution, especially if you plan to subboard where there is no lifeguard.
Thứ nhất là phải học. Người mới chơi thì cần phải có một cái kiến thức căn bản.
The first thing is to acquire the basic knowledge. The second thing is to always wear a life jacket and a SUP leash attaching the board to your foot. If you are a newcomer, subboard only with an experienced partner. And be sure to familiarize yourself with the place where you intend to subboard.
Kian advises wearing a subboarding costume that is flattering yet comfortable. You need room to move freely, so avoid wearing clothing that's too tight. Don't wear jeans or a skirt. Waterproof sports shoes or sandals are okay. You should wear a hat and sunglasses if it is sunny, and bring along a raincoat if it's threatening to rain. Electronic devices should be in a waterproof case. The best time for subboarding is the late afternoon. To introduce the new sport, You Move Sub Club Hanoi offers subboard rentals every Saturday and Sunday for 120,000 Vietnam dong, about $5, for 2 hours for club members, and 200,000 Vietnam dong, about $8.5 for 2 hours for non-members.
It's time for Business in Focus. The Australian Department of Agriculture and Water Resources has recently announced the import requirements of fresh longan from Vietnam. It's good news for Vietnam's agriculture and longan farmers, despite strict requirements set by Australia.
The Vietnam Trade Office in Australia is working to help Vietnamese longan exporters to obtain an import license from the Australian government as soon as possible. Import conditions for fresh longan fruit from Vietnam have been published on the Australian Department of Agriculture's Biosecurity Import Conditions System. The information was released at the Vietnam-Australia Business Connection Conference in Sydney last weekend, with representatives from Vietnamese provinces, Australian firms, investment funds, and business associations. The longan must have a clear origin and certificate of quarantine, package, and conveyance. The Vietnamese Embassy and the Association of the Vietnamese Businesses in Australia are advocating for Vietnamese longan to be exported to Australia as soon as possible. Chen Ba Phúc, president of the Association of Vietnamese Businesses in Australia, said.
Hội doanh nhân Việt Nam tại Úc vui mừng và phấn khởi để hỗ trợ cho.
We are very glad that Australia has introduced import requirements for fresh Vietnamese longan. The association will encourage its members to import longan to sell in supermarkets and stores in Australia. The association will work with the Vietnam Trade Office to organize a Vietnamese longan day to introduce the fruit to Australian people.
With experience in exporting lychee, mango, and dragon fruit to Australia, Vietnamese exporters are recommended to strictly abide by quality procedures, packaging, trademark, and advertisement, focusing on the longan's characteristics and Vietnam's as a haven for longan. Nguyễn Phú Hòa, head of the Vietnam Trade Office in Australia, said.
Thương vụ đã lên kế hoạch rất là cụ thể, xác định cái chiến lược là phải quảng
The Trade Office has a detailed advertisement strategy for longan as a special fruit of Vietnam. The Trade Office will work with the Vietnamese Embassy and the Business Association to organize a Vietnamese longan day. We have printed leaflets and posters to introduce longan at supermarkets. We'll target young Australian consumers to build a future market for the fruit.
Before issuing import requirements of fresh Vietnamese longan, the Australian Department of Agriculture and Water Resources sent a working group to Vietnam to evaluate the growing areas, production and processing practices in Bến Tre and Hưng Yên provinces. Vietnam and Australian agencies have been working regularly to bring the Vietnamese longan to the Australian market. The fruit has entered selective markets such as the US, Japan, South Korea, and the EU, all meeting standards related to health, safety, uniformity, quality, and availability throughout the year. In Australia, longans are grown in Queensland and northern part of New South Wales and harvested from January to June. If Vietnamese longan is imported to Australia outside of the local longan season, it can be sold at attractive prices. Besides marketing Vietnamese longan, the Vietnam Trade Office plans to introduce Australian people to other Vietnamese products and trademarks, as well as Vietnamese nature and landscape. A hotline is open for Australian consumers purchasing Vietnamese products, and the Trade Office has become a Vietnamese club for Australian businesses to seek necessary information.
Đường xa lá rơi đón mùa thu, nắng ấm áp nhạc ru. Nhớ anh đến từng giờ dù trong giấc mơ, và như chẳng nhìn thấy một ai, chỉ có mỗi mình anh. Rồi dạo bước tay nắm thẹn thùng trời mây mỉm cười. Tình yêu tới đôi lúc hàng đêm, anh chẳng đến mà xem, và anh chẳng cứ hờn ghen là ta đã.
cover version of Can We Love. This song has brought our show to an end. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Inilah Radio Serat Vietnam yang dipancarkan langsung dari Hanoi, ibu kota Republik Sosialis Vietnam.
Saudara pendengar, dalam siaran hari ini kami sampaikan acara-acara serta berita Vietnam dan internasional. Ulasan Radio Suara Vietnam dengan judul Memperkokoh Hubungan Persahabatan Vietnam-Malaysia. Dan akhirnya acara Vietnam Negeri dan Rakyatnya dengan reportase yang berjudul Phạm Đức An